You ready? Okay. State,
Yes, Your Honor.
announce the case and yourselves.
Yes, Your Honor. We're here on State of Florida versus Mark Sievers, 15 CF 673B. Representing the state is Christina Pacheco from the Attorney General's Office, also Assistant State Attorney Hamid Hunter from the 20th Judicial Circuit.
Defense.
Good morning, Your Honor. Megan Montagno, Joseph Fontaine, John Bianco on behalf of Mr. Sievers.
And for the record, Mr. Sievers is present. I'll make sure you guys have his headset working properly.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is it working?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If there's a problem, just let us know. Okay. State's ready to proceed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense is ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Next witness.
Alicia Cadenas, please.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name for the record, please?
My name is Alicia, A-L-I-C-I-A, Cadenas, C-A-D-E-N-A-S.
And if you could speak closer to the microphone, it would be appreciated. And where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed at Signature Science, which has a forensic DNA testing laboratory in Austin, Texas.
Okay. And in what capacity are you employed there?
I am the validation manager and the forensic DNA analyst as well.
Okay. And prior to being employed there, where were you employed?
I was employed at DNA Labs International from January 2014 to June of 2021.
Okay.
And while I worked there, I was a senior DNA analyst, the technical leader, as well as a laboratory supervisor.
And prior to your work with DNA Labs International, were you employed anywhere else?
Yes, I was. I was at the Virginia Department of Forensic Science. I was there for approximately 7 years, working as a forensic biologist in the forensic science section.
Okay. And could you please detail for us what your educational background is?
I received a Master of Science in Forensic Science from Florida International University and a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Nova Southeastern University.
And have you received any specialized training in the field of DNA analysis?
Yes, at each of my positions I did receive training. At the Virginia Department of Forensic Science, it was a 10-month hands-on training program where I worked alongside qualified examiners and actual casework on training samples that were meant to mimic actual samples. I had to complete a technical oral competency exam as well as a formal mock trial. And then subsequently at DNA Labs International and at Signature Science, I also had to complete training as well as a competency exam.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the state concedes that the witness is qualified to give her opinion in this court.
Noted.
Okay. Now, how did you become involved in this case?
It was when I was working at DNA Labs International. I issued several reports related to this case for evidence that was submitted by Lee County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. So you were initially approached by the Lee County Sheriff's Office to do work on this case?
Yes, they submitted evidence to the laboratory.
Okay. And we're going to focus on two particular pieces of evidence, a backpack and a blue jumpsuit. When were those items submitted to your lab?
Those were received on August 28th, 2015.
And what was your lab asked to do with those items?
We were asked to examine them for the possible presence of blood, as well as to perform or collect a sample for DNA testing and perform that analysis.
Okay. And let's take each individual item. you received a backpack, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What happens when your lab receives an item of evidence?
When an item of evidence is received, it's first logged into our laboratory information management system, which is an electronic system that tracks that item in the laboratory and provides a chain of custody. Each item is assigned its own unique item number within the laboratory. For the actual screening process, the individual screening it will do a visual examination of the item. They're going to document the condition of the package, the condition of the item itself, note any visible staining on it, and in this case, they would perform any blood testing as needed on possible blood stains. And then once that's complete, they will collect a sample for DNA depending on the case information.
Okay. And with respect to the backpack, after the visual inspection, what was noted?
After the visual inspection, blood testing was performed and no blood was detected on the item.
Was there any swabbing or any DNA detected on any part of the backpack?
There was a sample that was collected from the arm straps of the backpack, and the DNA profile obtained from that sample indicated a mixture of at least 3 individuals with at least 1 male contributor, and it was determined to be inconclusive for comparison purposes, which essentially means it didn't meet the criteria in order to use for comparison. There are certain thresholds that would need to be met.
Okay. And just for the sake of the record, to make it complete, could you briefly describe what DNA is?
Yes, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the material that contains all of the information that a living thing needs to develop and function. You get half of your DNA from your mother, half from your father. About 99% of DNA is the same for all human beings. And about 1% will differ between individuals, and that's where we focus our testing on.
Okay. And in this particular case, you said that there was a mixture involved with the straps of the backpack.
Yes, that's correct. A DNA profile could essentially, when I evaluate a DNA profile, I'm looking to see how many possible contributors are present. It could be a single source, meaning it originates from one individual, or it could be a mixture. And then based on how much, what I'm seeing, I could determine the minimum amount of individuals that could be contributing. And for this particular sample, it was determined to be at least 3 individuals.
Okay. But in the end, you couldn't do an actual comparison with any particular individual with this?
That's correct. The profile was determined to be inconclusive for comparison.
Thank you. And does that mean that there's a threshold that wasn't met in order to be compared?
Yes. So essentially, it could either mean that we're seeing indications of at least 3, but not enough information from all 3 individuals to do a comparison. So it wasn't able to meet that criteria.
Okay. And the other item submitted was a set of blue coveralls, is that correct?
That's correct.
And was this item also visually inspected?
Yes, a visual exam was conducted. Any staining that appeared to be the possible blood was tested, and no blood was detected on the item.
Okay. So there was no visual blood on this item?
There were stains that were tested. However, no blood was detected. So essentially, when we do a visual exam, we'll be looking for any possible stains that resemble blood or could be masking the presence of blood. So if there's any even dirt-like staining that could be masking it, we may sample to make sure that there's nothing being masked. And also, depending on the color of the item, we may do random samples of the item to see if there's any blood detected as well.
Okay. Was this item also examined to see if there was any wearer DNA?
Yes, a sample was collected from the interior wrists, neck, and underarm areas of the coveralls.
Okay. And did this lead to further analysis?
When this proceeded through the process, it stopped at a point where we determined how much DNA is present in the sample. So at that point, it was determined that no DNA was detected, which means that we weren't able to proceed further.
Okay. And you authored a report on this case with those findings?
That's correct.
And that report was submitted to the Lee County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And at that point, were the items returned to the Lee County Sheriff's Office?
Subsequently, it was returned. I don't have the exact date of return in front of me, but it was returned to the agency.
Okay. Were you ever deposed in this case?
I don't have any documentation of a deposition. I'm not aware of or don't recall.
And do you recall if you testified at trial?
I don't believe I did, no.
I'll pass the witness at this time, Your Honor.
State.
Good morning, Ms. Cadenas.
Good morning.
So the testimony that you gave is in relation to your second report, which was provided on August 31st or on or about August 31st of 2015, right?
That's correct.
And you authored several other reports related to this case.
Yes, I did.
How many?
4 reports in total.
And those reports were in reference to other items and not just the backpack?
That's correct.
All right. So you talked earlier that our DNA is what you said over 99% similar.
Yes, for human beings.
So, for example, our DNA determines such things such as eye color, skin color and tone, hair texture, right? Gender.
Yes, so DNA will essentially give information to provide what hair color or eye color we may have.
So you've got greenish, bluish eyes, brown hair, light texture skin, and you're a female. I'm an African-American male. I've got brown eyes, dark curly hair, or what's left of it. And you say, despite our obvious differences, our DNA is 99% the same.
Yes, 99% for all human beings, and then the remaining 1% is where we see differences.
Does the fact that our DNA is so close cause any issues when there are mixtures of DNA, when there's more than one contributor to a sample? And if so, what are those issues?
When we're testing DNA, we are looking at various areas that we know are different between human beings, but there could be sharing of DNA at certain areas. That's why we test multiple areas. So in this case, for example, we use the Identifier Plus system, which targets 16 areas of DNA. So while each individual may share at one area, they overall will expect to see different DNA profiles when we look at all 16 areas. But when we're dealing with mixtures, it does become more complex in terms of how much is being shared, which is something that could lead to why it would be inconclusive.
So if a person was known to have had possession of that backpack and their DNA wasn't found on the backpack or was in a mixture that was inconclusive, what does that mean?
Since the mixture was inconclusive, I wouldn't be able to make any determination as to who could be contributing. In general, DNA, if you come in contact with an item, you may leave DNA behind. It doesn't mean that you will definitely leave DNA behind. So there's various factors that can contribute whether or not you leave DNA behind when you come in contact with something.
And there are factors that affect the presence of DNA on an object, right?
That's correct.
The environment, for one, right?
Yes, that could have an effect.
Humidity,
Yes.
sunlight.
Yes, over time, certain elements could affect how long DNA could last on an item.
And when you say that the mixture of DNA on the armband or the arm strap on the backpack was inconclusive, were you testing that against the standards from Jimmy Rodgers and Taylor Showmaker?
At this stage, I would determine that's inconclusive for comparison. I wouldn't proceed to looking at any of the standards in comparison.
Okay, so because you weren't able to develop a conclusive DNA profile from the strap, you weren't then able to compare it against any of the other control samples that were submitted.
That's correct.
So you're not able to say that Jimmy Rodgers' DNA was present on the backpack.
I wouldn't be able to say either way.
And you're not able to say that Jimmy Rodgers' DNA was not present on the backpack.
That's correct.
You're not able to say that Taylor Shoemaker's DNA is present on the backpack.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to offer any conclusion as to that.
And you're not able to say that her DNA was not present on the backpack.
That's correct.
The blue coveralls that you were given, what condition were they in?
The notes indicate that there was debris and bugs present, so it appears to have been out in the elements.
Does being out in the elements, can being out in the elements affect the any potential DNA samples that might be on an item?
It can. It would all depend on various factors. I wouldn't be able to offer, because I don't know the conditions that I was exposed to, I wouldn't be able to offer any information as to what would be likely or not in terms of whether DNA could go away, but in general, being exposed to certain elements can degrade or break down DNA.
And when you said you conducted a visual exam of the blue coveralls to look for blood, how do you conduct that visual exam?
So the visual exam was conducted by another individual at the laboratory, but I do have the notes related to it. Essentially, the item is pulled out in the laboratory in a clean work area, and all the notes document the condition of the item as well as where any staining may be present and what would be tested.
Are any alternative light sources or chemicals used to try and reveal any potential biological samples on the item?
In this case, an alternate light source wasn't used. Generally, an alternate light source is used to visualize any stains that may not be visible under natural light. But this could be particularly helpful with semen, saliva, perspiration stains that may not be visible. In this case, it was just a visual exam under regular light. In terms of chemical tests, we did do, the blood test would be a chemical test.
And it's safe to say, unlike the semen, saliva, and other items, blood staining often leaves a visible brownish reddish stain on items.
Generally, yes. There's an appearance of blood that we look for, and like I said, if it could be masked by any type of other staining that looks different, we will test. And also a darker item, so something that's like black in color, we will do random sampling of areas in case we're not seeing something visibly.
And unlike the backpack, on the backpack you said that there was a mixture, inconclusive for comparison purposes. Were you able to locate a DNA profile from any of the areas you swabbed on the coveralls?
For the coveralls, the interior wrists, neck, and underarm areas were sampled, and no DNA was detected.
And why were those, in fact, those areas were sampled because they're wear areas, right?
Yes, it would be areas that may come in contact if you were wearing the item.
And so, for example, the wrists, oftentimes from movement, will leave skin cells on the wrist areas of a garment, correct?
Yes, that's possible.
And on the neck area of a garment, again, from maybe even sweat as well as from movement, you can leave skin cells on the neck area of a garment, correct?
That's correct.
Does the fact that DNA, in fact, the fact that DNA wasn't found on these coveralls doesn't mean they weren't actually worn, right?
That's correct. When we say no DNA was detected, it means that there could be no DNA or DNA below the detection limits of the test. So there are certain thresholds that are certain sensitivity to the test itself.
Or DNA could have been obliterated by the environment, right?
That's possible.
And so because of the fact that you didn't locate a profile, you weren't able to compare anything to the known standards from Taylor Shoemaker, Jimmy Rodgers, Teresa Sievers, or Curtis Wright.
That's correct. I wasn't able to draw any comparisons since no profile was obtained, or no DNA was detected.
Thank you.
Vince. Next witness to be released or retained?
Released, Your Honor.
Agree?
Agreed.
Thank you, ma'am. You're free to go. Next witness.